Right now, somewhere on Earth, there's a person sitting in complete darkness. No sound, no light, no other human being for hundreds of miles. And in a few days, they'll start seeing things that aren't there. Not because they're crazy, because that's exactly what your brain is built to do when you take away everything it needs to stay sane. Today, we're going to walk through what actually happens to the human mind in total isolation. Not the movie version, the real one. Scientists who tested it on themselves, prisoners who lived it for decades, and a phenomenon so strange that even neuroscientists aren't fully sure how to explain it. Stick around, because the last one on this list is the part almost nobody talks about. Let's start with the most basic thing your brain does without you even noticing: keeping track of time. In 1962, a French scientist named Michel Siffre decided to find out what would happen if he removed that ability completely. He climbed down into a freezing cave in the French Alps, 130 feet below the surface, with no clock, no sunlight, and no way to know if it was day or night. He planned to stay for 2 months just to see what his mind would do. At first, it was manageable. He read, he wrote in his journal, he slept when he felt tired. But slowly, something started slipping. Time stopped feeling real. When his team finally called down to tell him the experiment was over, or 63 days had passed, Siffre didn't believe them. He'd been counting every single day in his journal. By his count, only 35 days had gone by. His mind hadn't just lost track of time, it had compressed 2 months into what felt like 5 weeks. And here's the part that should really worry you. This wasn't a one-time fluke. 10 years later, Siffre went back underground, and this time for 6 months, specifically to see if the effect would get worse. It did. His sleep-wake cycle didn't just slow down, it doubled. Instead of a 24-hour day, his body settled into a 48-hour rhythm, 36 hours of being awake, followed by 12 hours of sleep. And the strangest part? He couldn't tell the difference between his long days and his short ones. They all felt exactly the same length. Which raises a genuinely unsettling question. If your sense of time is this fragile, what else is your brain quietly rewriting when there's no one around to check? Because losing track of days is just the beginning. The next thing your isolated brain does is a lot harder to explain. There's a phenomenon that shows up again and again in survival stories, and it has a name: the third man factor. It goes like this: people in extreme isolation, especially combined with cold, exhaustion, or lack of oxygen, report feeling like someone else is with them. Not a hallucination in the way you're picturing. It doesn't talk nonsense, doesn't scare them. It guides them. It feels calm, helpful, almost protective. Polar explorers have described it for over a century. Solo sailors lost at sea. Survivors pulled from collapsed buildings. All strangers, all separated by decades, describing almost the exact same thing: an unseen presence that appeared right when they needed it most, and vanished the moment they were safe. Here's the part that makes this genuinely fascinating instead of just spooky. Scientists actually recreated it in a lab, on command. Researchers in Switzerland built a robotic device that delayed the feedback between a person's back and chest by a fraction of a second, basically confusing the brain's sense of self-touch. Healthy volunteers, wide awake in a normal lab, suddenly reported feeling like someone was standing right behind them. No danger, no mountain, no isolation, just a tiny glitch in how the brain tracks its own body, and it manufactured a companion out of nothing. Which means the presence isn't a ghost and it isn't a hallucination in the broken sense. It's your brain's backup system kicking in when it stops getting enough information about the world and about itself. But isolation doesn't just create phantom company. Sometimes it changes the way people move, speak, and even look for months at a time. Every year, a small group of researchers volunteers to stay at Antarctic stations through the winter. 7 to 8 months of total isolation in near-permanent darkness with no way in or out. Doctors have a name for what happens to them: winter over syndrome, memory lapses, trouble concentrating, and something the crews themselves nicknamed the long eye. A kind of blank, glassy stare that can last for several seconds, where a person just stops, not asleep, not quite awake either. Here's the twist almost nobody expects. It's not the cold. It's not the danger. Researchers who studied these crews found that the extreme temperatures and physical hardship weren't the main stressor at all. The real damage came from something much smaller, the slow, grinding monotony of seeing the same faces in the same rooms with zero privacy for months on end. In other words, it's not the darkness outside that breaks people, it's the sameness inside. So if isolation can quietly reshape how people behave, what is it actually doing to the brain itself? Because this next part isn't theory, it's been measured. Neuroscientists have put isolated brains under fMRI scanners, and what they found should change how you think about loneliness completely. When someone is socially isolated, the brain activity that shows up is almost identical to hunger cravings. Your brain doesn't just miss people, it craves them, the same way it craves food when you haven't eaten. And it gets more physical than that. Isolation activates the exact same brain regions that light up during physical pain. Not something similar, the same regions. That's not a metaphor when someone says loneliness hurts. Your brain is registering it as an injury. And over time, it's not just activity that changes, it's structure. Studies on long-term isolation have found that the brain region responsible for memory can physically shrink. In one study on rats kept in isolation for a month, their neurons shrank by 20%, from nothing except the absence of other minds nearby. So we've seen what isolation does to strangers in labs, to scientists in caves, to researchers at the bottom of the world. But what happens when isolation isn't a choice, when someone else is using it against you on purpose? Natasha Kampusch was 10 years old when she was taken and held in a hidden cellar for 8 years. She later said something that lines up disturbingly well with everything we just covered. The lack of light and human contact didn't just wear her down emotionally, it mentally weakened her, to the point where it made her more vulnerable to her captor's control. Isolation wasn't just a side effect of what happened to her. For the person controlling her, it was the method. And on the other side of the world, a man named Robert King spent 29 years in solitary confinement in a Louisiana prison. Decades later, he described something specific. The experience had permanently distorted his eyesight and his physical sense of orientation. Not his mood, not his memory, his actual senses. Permanently altered, simply from the absence of other people for long enough. Which brings us back to that person we started with, sitting alone in the dark, hundreds of miles from anyone. So what actually happens to your mind in total isolation? It stops trusting time. It starts inventing company. It reshapes your behavior without you noticing. And if it goes on long enough, it can leave a mark that never fully goes away. Here's the strange comfort in all of this, though. Every single case we just covered proves the same thing. Your brain isn't malfunctioning when it does this. It's fighting, using every tool it has to keep you sane in a situation it was never designed to survive. The mind doesn't break easily. It bends in the strangest ways just to keep you whole. If this kind of thing fascinates you as much as it fascinates me, subscribe.